Live show number 442. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us on whatever platform you're finding us, whether it be Facebook on multiple pages with lots of our very talented, very skilled, associations as well, and vendors and so forth that have decided to broadcast our live weekly show about hospitality marketing. Thank you so much for all of them. Also, YouTube channels, same people, different people also included. But anyway, multiple channels on YouTube. Of course, X, formerly Twitter. I know where we keep saying that. We should just say X nowadays. And LinkedIn, which will be only on my profile. LinkedIn still has the singular broadcasting restriction to it. Other than that, though, if you catch us on Twitch, which is gaming consoles, PlayStations, and Game Boys and stuff like that, you can catch us there. Also on our TV channel, the Hospitality Marketing Channel, Hospitality Channel. That is on any of your smart TVs, whether it be your Roku TV, your Amazon Prime TV, Google TV, Apple TV, LG, Samsung's, all of them. We are there. Just look for the Hospitality Channel. You'll find our bright and smiley face. On the free side, there is a paid gateway for better content, or better content. That sounds bad. That this content's bad. Other content, more of a defined content associated with how-tos and so forth from industry leaders about hospitality marketing. So with that, our topic discussion today, as always, is a reflection of kind of current dialogue for me with what I do with my clients and with all the people that ask me to participate and speak at different places and so forth. And it's coming up now that we've had enough time with GA4 and its transition from last Friday and the accumulation of data, and then talking about GTM shells and the usability of GA4 and what you're defining it. And we've had several shows about the data usage and data and data functionalities and so forth. But we haven't talked about the usage of data as much as we probably should. So our topic today is how to change from reporting to action. It sounds like an overview of much larger dialogue, and to that sense it is. But in specifics to our data, and this has just been a recent conversation I've had of one of many in relationship to it's 2024 and we have shiny new budgets and we have new progresses and processes and we have some people in new roles. We have people transitioning from roles. We have transitions from filling a void of somebody that's leaving a role to a larger role, other people that are being replaced into a new role because of shifting from where they were, whatever have you. And a lot of it, and some of the earliest questions, as you assume a role or change roles, is what information do I have available to me? And usually it is legacy reporting, reports that have accumulated over time because of a request or a demand or a need. And the report runs in perpetuity at that point. Maybe at some point somebody wanted a pace analysis of a segment or a channel, and that turned into a perennial monthly report. From both sides of the conversation that I've had personal experience with when I ran properties and was at property level all the way through the departments, including GMs and regionals and so forth, I was always frustrated by the persistent level of demand of reports from people in roles that weren't mine, asking for aspects or insights or details about what I was doing, to the point that as I think most general managers or department heads or exec committees would have as a complaint, almost to a paralysis of spending more time talking about and reporting about what we were doing than actually doing it. And we would always contest that the level of demand for reports and the aggregation of data for reports was so invasive that we were not able to do our actual job, which was whatever that role was, GM or department head. I still hold that to be relatively true, with the caveat that it can be fixed through a couple of means, either reducing all of the reports that you're doing or using the data you have more effectively so as not to have so much time spent on the generation and accumulation and sharing of that data. And I'll get to both of those possible solutions in a little bit of our discussion. On the other side, there is a frustration that is unknown to people at properties at a corporate level and above of a detachment of what's going on at the property, an untethered feel. Yet in the world that you operate at a corporate level, you are directly tied to their performance as to your job security and performance metrics. So it is a very discomforting feeling, and I'm speaking now to the property people from if you were in the corporate world, that a property that you live and breathe and ride and so forth on is not giving you, or you don't have enough information to answer questions or to know what's actually happening at that property. Hence, you overcompensate in that inability to be first person at that property because you have multiple properties, perhaps, by asking them to over-report or have large amounts of reports that you can use so you have a sense of what's going on so you can contribute to their success potentially, which is your ultimate goal. But also more importantly, to be aware of being able to answer and collaborate at the level that you're at the corporate world, knowing what the property can and can't do. So both sides are right and both sides have the problem. So how can we solve both problems? And that goes to my topic of how to change from reporting to action. If you think about it, and again, going back to the example of if you're stepping into a new role or you are looking at your new year and you're looking to do things in a more efficient way or a performance way, new year, new start, new goals kind of thing, you look at your reporting. And usually, if you're to be really acritical of your reporting, you look at certain pieces of certain reports more than you look at the collective total of the report. And I say that from a time efficiency perspective. You may have PACE reports. You may have recent, the tallied sheet that day of actuals for occupancies, finals as to productions of campaigns, um, just general information, pace and trend to budget, your forecast, the accuracy of what you forecasted to the actualizations. And every day either starts with or has included with it some aspect of reviewing these reports. There's not a day that goes by. There's not a day you can say, that's the only day I'm going to do reports. But a lot of people try. And I imagine some are successful. But they say, I only look at reports on Monday because the rest of my week I dedicate to the responsibilities of my operation. Okay. It makes it a little hard because you're blinded for 5 or 6 days that maybe something you should have been aware of wasn't. And for that reason, you may have not made the decision you should have made. But we can argue that point over a beer sometime. The idea is that you spend time looking for certain pieces of reports. A lot of the reports that people have are inherited reports or mandated reports from people that they don't have the influence of saying, I don't need that report, I don't want that report, I don't have the report, because there's a bane to that. There's a two-edged sword. If you deny a report because you find it inefficient, ineffective, or not as useful, and in so doing, something happens that report would have revealed, and you, because of your insistence of culling down the need of that report, are now held culpable for the fact that you are the one that said, I didn't need the report, and the report was there to tell us XYZ, and XYZ happened, and you didn't want the report, and therefore something went wrong, and you could have done a better decision with it. That overhangs with people why they cling to residual reports, because the day something happens, somebody's going to wag a finger and say, well, that was on the report you said you didn't want anymore, or you didn't think you needed anymore. You know, everybody has pet reports. And you'll find that quickly. You'll find in some ways there's two origins to reports. The active people that needed the report and convinced people that it should be integrated into the daily requirements to properties or departments. The people that are long since gone that created a report that is kind of the legacy report that ownership and C-level people always look at, and therefore it must live in perpetuity, even though the data is either old, incomplete, or unuseful. And all of those threes are the death of a report. There should be a death of a report, but they're not. So in order to convince everyone to change what they do with reporting, and again, to solve the problem, either reduce the time to create them or improve the efficiency of the information they're providing you, I keep going back to our topic of how to change from reporting to action. I put it into the context now of what we have as data, and you've heard me speak of data quite a lot. I promise I will go into other aspects as time goes on, but data is such a key element now to our decision modeling. As to what we did prior to GA4 to how we do it now. Now, there is people that will say that the data that we get from GA4 is only a sampling, a percentage of all of the data that should be looked at. And there is a truth to that. It depends on how well you have tracked what you are able to get as data. In a recent program for a couple of our clients, we went over and tested that having direct access to the PMS, which would probably, in all terms for most hotels, be the ultimate point of truth. That is where you actually measure your revenue. That is where you do your billing from. So the actualization that your PMS holds is a stronger point of truth than the sources of business tracking that you do from outside resources, because the PMS is literally what you're sending as commission checks to travel agents and payments to the bank and so forth. So we have found that with proper tracking and tagging being the identification of the data that you're looking for, that we can get within 10% consistency of all data that's available. So we looked at all the data we're accumulating with GA4 and our reporting and our dashboarding, okay? Because reporting, as much as I bang the idea of reporting, it is a function. And all of the point of truth data that would be your PMS. Here's the difference. PMS data is hard to use. It's there. It can tell you what it is, like, okay, this is how much we sold. This is the rooms we sold. This is when they booked. There's very hard, this is the geo addresses, but the data is there. So you're looking at it. You're looking at a list of everybody that stayed with you yesterday. You see their names. You see how many people were in the room, adults, children, and so forth. You see their physical address for billing and so forth. You see this. That's great. And it's a relatively long list. And you look at it and you look at your occupancy percentage, how many rooms you have versus how many you sold. You look at your RevPAR, how much money did you make off of all the rooms you had available to sell in comparison to how many were totally sold. Maybe you look at more advanced numbers like, what's my GoPAR? What's my total revenue that was generated from these people that I'm looking at this list that bought food or went to my spa or played golf or whatever it is other that you have for ancillary incomes to your property. And it's great. That's a report. Ta-da! I see this. What's it telling me? Is this a good list? Well, if your occupancy is decent, it's a good list. Is it 100% occupancy? Well, then it's not a totally good list. It's good for compared to what? Good is a relative term of comparison. I can say anything's good, but I have to define what that means. Is it better than what? Is it different than that? It is a matter of reference. A lot of times, reports are just that. It's a report. Here is the data. But what is it saying? What usefulness of it is there? Obviously, and I'm not trying to sound Captain Obvious by this, if your occupancy report from the report is less than you had financially planned for or forecasted as available to your efforts, there is the interpretation of knowing that that was an insufficient production. And what then forensically can we look at that didn't do what we forecasted it to do, to know better, perhaps next time, similar circumstance, how to avoid that downfall. Case being a contribution of a type of business. Maybe we expected more walk-ins that day. Maybe we expected more displacement for weather. Maybe we expected a longer length of stay because of an event. Whatever it is, that action from the report is the most valuable aspect of that whole timeline of engagement. So if you generate a report that shows your occupancy and shows the people that stayed and so forth, and you had to send it to somebody, what are they doing with it? Well, it's an acknowledgement of awareness. Like I told you from a corporate side, a lot of it has to do with just general awareness. How'd the day go? How we do for business? So forth. And just sending that up is what is required. That's great. But then that same information gets used into a different report is, where did these people come from? Same data source, different report. Why can't they guys get the same report? Well, they don't need the revenue numbers. They just need the geographies. Okay, but why can't we just cull down the diversity of the types of reports to a report that has it in there and they can get the part that they want? These discussions should have been going on in your particular company if they haven't. And even with that, it doesn't ultimately resolve the issue. The issue is that still there's a lot of data that's being pushed to people or to within people that is just made aware of. It's present. There's no action item. If you hand the report to your GM that day, which they asked for, how was our performance last night? Here's my occupancy. Boom. Follow it up with a question. What are you going to do with it? What do you mean what are you going to do with it? Well, there's the data. What are you going to do with it? Well, I just want to see what we did. Okay, well, I could have told you that. I could have told you we had 67% occupancy and an ADR of $250, $259.10. Oh, okay. Well, I need to know where they may have come from. Okay, so do you want a tally of zip codes? Do you want a heat map of zip codes? Do you want a heat map of geo? Do you want to know? Oh, I want to know their booking window. When did they book to when did they stay? Great, we can generate that off to the side here too. If that, what are you going to do with it? That's the question. What are you going to do with the data? And I can tell you that 99.9%, I'm being exaggeratory. Exaggeratory isn't that even a word? I'm exaggerating. I would say a very hefty percentage, a made up percentage in my mind would be 80 to 90% of all reports have ineffective action data. They are just there to simply give you information. They're there to, um, here it is. There's your data. Now, there are people that need the data as a touchstone, as a sounding board to their performance metrics. All right, we're looking at our conversion percentages. We're looking at our pace of booking. We're looking at our total volume of traffic. We're looking at our engagement rates. We're looking at our traffic funnel, where they went from A to point B. We're looking at attribution as to how they connected to us to get to a conversion for us, and so forth. And all of those things are usable by them because they're asking questions with the answer in mind and what to do with the answer once they have it. Case in point, I look at a performance report for marketing campaigns and I look at what was our conversion, what was our total volume, both in production and before. So we have a funnel. What was my total traffic? Okay. So we look at stages of engagement and determine whether each of those stages we're doing as well as we expected, less than we expected, or more than we expected. More than we expected on the earlier stages, as we like to define upper funnel, doesn't necessarily mean better production, lower stage, in the sense of knowing how to do something. And I would like to explain this in a little bit more of a detail. When I look at a funnel of production as to, and this keeps it very simple, 4 stages. What was my engaged traffic? What did they click? How much of that clicked? You know, they may have engaged, but what did they click? How much of that went to the cart? And how much of that converted? These 4 stages, bringing it into a simple 4-step process. It's not upper funnel where we're talking about destination information, interest, brand awareness. We're not talking about that from a marketing perspective. Big, huge funnel, come to the United States and then worry about it from there. We're talking about how many people engaged with us, traffic, how many people clicked, okay, and then how many people went to cart from that click, and how many people converted from that cart, that process. Now, if I had 200% increase in the amount of engaged sessions and everything else stayed the same, a positive number would come out of that. Why? Because if the conversion stayed the same, by the sheer increase of numbers of users, I would generate more revenue. It's one of the marketing funnel reactions. You have things that you can modify as to the production value. Higher volume is one of them. More people, same conditions elsewhere, more revenue. So from a glance of a report, life's good. Okay. Well, let's take another modifier into that funnel and say where that may not be a good sign, but nobody's looking deep enough or looking at the right things or asking the right question to know if it is. Let's say the volume grew so much that even though the conversion to the final purchase acquisition went down, it still showed a positive number. Well, that would mean that we're not doing as well with what traffic we're driving to ourselves. Our efficiency of converting them is not as good as it was before. So that would get missed in the report. Somebody would glance at the report, look at the production report, see that our ad campaigns produced a positive 5%. Wow, okay. At that simple number, life's good, put the report down, move on to the next thing they have to do. If you were to ask a question, is that because of what? Then you would go to find that volume went up, but also looking deeper, conversions went down. So we're leaky. We have a boat that has a lot of holes in it. And as long as we go fast and keep the engine going up and burn all the gas we can to keep going fast, we won't sink. But if we slow down, aka less volume, then we're going to, with the lower conversion, not be able to sustain our business. We're going to spend too much to get too little. So that's a problem. Looking at it more from a action point of view is looking at the stage of, okay, I got all this traffic, and let's say that one's constant. And our conversions went up 10%, 5%, 2%, whatever. Again, from an initial report review, positive revenue. We're doing well. No, um, not if you look at the fact that we are reducing our traffic. Our conversions have improved, so we're doing better with the traffic we're getting. So, and this is where it gets into where I have to tell the truth, not versus the point I'm trying to make. The truth of it is, sometimes that's a strategy. Better efficiency by better quality of traffic. You reduce your cost of the volume of traffic you're trying to drive and improve the efficiency of the targeting of the traffic you're getting. So you are, in effect, potentially spending more, but proportionally less than what's necessary for the traffic. So that's the truth of it. The reality of it is that you could be bleeding what you're spending by not driving it to the right people, so your audience is diminishing. And that's the point of the conversation I want to make, is that you could be spending not well in the sense of your targeting and your focus, or an offer that doesn't resonate, rate resistance issues, maybe demand issues. You're pushing dates that there's very little inventory and none at the rates that you're purporting you can give a discount for, because you blocked them out that rated code isn't available for those rates. You might be pushing against your own brake. You're trying to push the gas, but you have the parking brake on. That kind of mentality. So it's indicative of researching what is the numbers saying, the action. And that comes from the idea of what do you want, what would you do with the answer? Okay. Even if the number looks positive, asking why, with the why being, if I find the answer, is it going to be affirmational or non-affirmational detrimental, meaning that it's showing something I'm doing wrong? If you come with it that way, then you're going to look for one of two predications: validation of what you're doing. Great. It looks like our increase in budget is increasing volume, and our current conversion value shows that we're still good on target. Or not affirmational, non-confirming. The money we're spending is improving our conversion percentage, which is holding our integrity of rate gain or revenue gain, but it's diminishing our audience. Is that what we wanted to do? Was that the purpose? I thought we were expanding our ad variations to expand the audience. Then it would be a bad thing. Or congratulations, our better targeting has reduced our cost of acquisition because we've reduced our large volume exposure requirements to spend. Okay, so we're getting more efficiency out of what we're spending. Congratulations. See, it can go either way. But the idea is that you would ask that question knowing what you would do with the answer before looking at the report to know whether or not there's a reason to look at it deeper than what it's saying. So, looking at reports, this opens up a whole new perspective on engagement with your vendor. And I say this even to your internal team, should you have an internal team handling this directly, that they're the facilitators. All too often in our busy over-reporting world, we have regulated that there's only one thing worse than doing too many reports, and that is too many meetings. There's fun stats that they always show up, especially at the beginning of the years where people get polled about this. Useless meetings is the number one irritant to most people for any reason anywhere. Having a meeting just to have a meeting is the terriblest thing that people do, and a waste of time. For those that are feeling productive and helpful and useful, they don't want to be caught talking incessantly about what they're doing or having to hear what they already know kind of conversations. Having efficient meetings is probably one of the most efficient things you can do for yourself, by culling down the number of meetings and being more clear about what the meetings are for preemptively. Here's our agenda. Here's our topics. Give your input. Validate what we're getting together for. We're burning jet fuel when we're sitting in the same room together. Let's think about these are the goals, objectives that we need to discuss while we're together, so we can deliberate them and walk out the door as fast as possible. That clarity of purpose gets lost. But I digress. The idea of having too many reports, again, is second only to having worse meetings. The idea of evaluating your reports from an agency perspective gets regulated to when it fits. Sadly, most times, because agencies are bent on diminishing the investment they require for collaborating with their client so that they don't have high costs. In other words, they're not having somebody that sits by a phone waiting for you to call them. That person's doing multiple things, and they have scheduled appointments with you as a client. They limit what they do based on what they're being paid to do. What you paid the agency to do is what they keep the genie in the bottle to do. They don't decide that they're going to go outside. That's called project creep. They're not going to do more than that they're getting paid to do. Great agencies like to do what it takes and charge for what's needed. keeping a vigilant communication, keeping a vigilant relationship, looking for opportunities is not what you usually buy with an agency relationship. That account manager is usually there with a certain list of tasks with certain checkbox beside them that indicate that they're fulfilling what has been contractually required of them in the relationship with the client. For that reason, meetings tend to be scheduled intermittently, usually end of or beginning of the month or mid-month, whatever way it lands for your company when they like talking to their agency or vendor. And through that, they usually forensically report what's been happening. Here's our performance. We said that we got approval from you all to have a $5,000 PPC budget. We did 80% of it on Google, 20% of it on Bing. We have a current conversion of percentage of this. We have a current revenue generation of this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, is that good or bad? Well, compared to period over period, it's better than last month. Well, business in December is way different than the business like in January. So please don't do period over period. Do year over year. How is last January to this January? Well, last January, this was happening and that was happening. And this is not happening this January the same way. So period over period, we might be doing better. Great. That's all I need to know. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Boom, out and done. That is an injustice to your company because you're not actually looking at how you're generating your revenue. Usually in forensic analysis, you have a single contrast. Am I doing better than my previous period, as I mentioned in the example, or over my previous year, again, as mentioned in my example? Some people go industry average. Am I doing better than industry average? Some people go against my comp set. Am I doing better than my comp set? That requires data of your comp set. That requires research. And you'll never get 100% accuracy from that. You'll get implied values from that, and you apply your value against that. That's an interesting measurement. I'm not against it. I think it's part of the process, not just a single point of truth. And what I mean, so that people understand what I mean by point of truth, it is a literal statement, but it means this is what I consider to be the core asset resource data. This is the data that I rely upon to be the answer to whatever it is I'm asking of it. There are other data sources that aren't the point of truth, but have the data the same. You hope the same, that they collaborate and corroborate each other from a sourcing of value. PMSs are a great point of truth. It gives you the ultimate revenue goal, revenue generations you have, and data, but it's a terrible process of getting the information you need from it to act on it. So you have other tools, like the reporting you get from a GA4. Okay, as I mentioned, you can get within 90% of all data that you're getting anyway, to use because you have more ways to manipulate the interpretation and understanding of the data. So going back to the agency relationship. It goes periodic and it goes forensically. Very few conversations talk about short-term, immediate modifications and changes. If you have one of those relationships, congratulations, that's a rarity. Most often than not, it isn't. What it is this is what we did with your money. This is the report we have for you. Good or bad, condemnation that we didn't perform as well as we had hoped, and or congratulations us, pat us on the back that we did better than expected. And so this is the budget we want for next month, or this is the budget you pre-approved. We feel that this modifications are necessary, usually more money. They very rarely say less, and then talk to you next month. Poof, and they're gone again. Well, now in the world of what we have for data, we have other options. We have the other option, and that is progressive understanding of what we're doing. You've heard me soapbox about two terms that get underused, pace and trend. They get overshadowed by RevPAR and old school stuff. ROI is the bane of those, where you're looking at only a static single optic lens of what I paid versus what I made off of it, regardless of future value, lifetime value, and attribution value. You're simply saying, I put this money into a channel and I expected a 10 to 1 return. I got an 8 to 1 return. It's not doing what I want. Stop the program. Not realizing that channel may be contributing through an attribution a higher value to another channel that's far and away better for you. And then you wonder why that channel diminished when you turn the valve over here. It's like, why did the sink upstairs run out of water when you turn the water valve off on the sink downstairs? Well, because that was feeding that. And now you stop feeding it and it has effect on it. So now with the ability of having data, large amounts of data, we don't have to look at single session progression to imply what other people that we're not tracking are doing. What do I mean by this? Back in the world of universal analytics, we had to define what we wanted to look at. I want to see everybody that's coming to my website and then go to my accommodations page and then clicked on the button to the book engine and bought this or bought anything. And that would turn into a goal, and that we would follow that. Did it happen? Did it happen? Did it happen? If it didn't happen, if it broke somewhere on the line, we'd look and say, why is it leaking here? Where is this going? Why is this not converting to what we built it to do over here? What's the disconnect from that? That's how we used to deal with it. In the implication that the people that we were tracking doing that also reflected people that we weren't tracking that did something similar to that they went and followed some part of the process that we were tracking, and they too didn't end up doing what we had hoped for them to do. It was an implied value to it. Now we have what everybody's done, so we can ask everybody what's going on. From that, we can do some really interesting things, and this is the whole juxt of the show today to talk through. We overwhelm purposely ourselves to put a lot of shiny in our reports. Complete graphics, tables, charts, spaghettis, bars, pies, some way of showing that we are on everything. We're watching everything. Look at this. There's all these things that are going on. These are our campaign structures. This is our engagements. This is our percentages. This is our costs. This is our CPCs. This is our cost of acquisition. This is our ROAS. We have tons of ways of describing what we're doing. Overwhelmingly so. The bigger, the meatier, the faster, the colorful the report, the better it is. Here it is. We know everything. Here, go take a look. Well, what do we learn from? Well, that's for you. You needed this report. We generated the badass Mamma Jam report for you. Here's all the stuff color coded and branched and bars and arrows and everything. You're the title that you're supposed to go what all this means. We're here just to generate for you. And that's what happens. Agencies say, here's your reports. And then when the client goes and says, wait a minute, why did something perform better? Well, it was in the report. We were showing you that these things they're going that way. You didn't tell us to do something different. It's always the mea culpa. It's your fault. No, it's my fault. Your fault. Anyways, what about taking this as an idea? Indicators that make sense to you. What do I mean by indicators? Taking the data, defining what you would do with the answer to know what question to ask to get it. I know that I've referred this 1,000 times. In the movie iRobot with Will Smith was the idea that he was trying to find out through his detectiveness of some hologram piece that was left by the victim. And when he asked a certain question, the hologram looked at it, now that's the right question to ask. I say that same statement here. Knowing what is the right question to ask means that you know what you would do with the answer. The answer is, I want to do better. How? Well, how's a hard answer. But you can define how you measure things that would tell you how. A lot of times we look at the raw data and we see we have to imply, we have to stare at it, we have to discover it. It's like a little Where's Waldo when we look at reports. What's the kernel of information I need? What is it that I'm seeing here that I need to see? I'll give you a first-person example of it. It was when I ran properties and presented my P&L monthly reviews or my annual budget proposal or so forth. I would watch the panel of people, the owners, representative owners, corporate, whatever, flip through or scroll through what I gave them. They were looking for milestones, benchmarks, variations. Where was I asking for more money past a certain percentage point to flag it that seems like more money requested than I should know, and or they were looking at the ratio of what I said was going to be revenue versus what I was going to spend to make it. They were looking for certain things. They're literally flipping through, back in the day when those papers stapled together, handed out, flipping through, looking for those magical numbers to go, okay, well, Lauren, hey, I'm noticing here on your sales budget forecast for such and such, you have a training line item that's 1.6%. Last year was 0.6%. Why are we doing a 1% increase on spending for training for sales? Justify that for me. Why? Well, sitting on both sides of the table. One is I needed to do what I needed to do for the property. When I sat on the other side of the table and I was doing the same thing that I'm now complaining about, it's because I have your property and the other 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 180 other properties outside in the waiting room waiting to come in the same thing. I have to create efficiencies of looking at what I need to look at to address what I need to be concerned with so I can move on to the next one. Scratch that. We have technology now that can help us sift through data to create better understandings of numbers. Wouldn't you love to have a report, I'd call it a notification, a dashboard, whatever way, that literally said, hey, you should look at this. This is different than what you thought it was going to be, for good or bad, whatever it is. It's different enough. If you're okay with what I'm showing is how much different it is, no problem. You're aware of it. If it's concerning, okay, with the definition of why would it be concerning, then click here to go get where the data came from to know what we're talking about, why this variation is going on. Creating indicators, performance metrics that are pre-performance metrics that then are used for other goals. Remember when I was telling you about a lot of times decisions are based on, is it the same? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it doing what we expected? Is it doing less than we expected? Is it doing more than we expected? And that's two sides of the coin. That goes from a cost side, that goes from a revenue side. And our world is based on literally both. Is it costing me something or am I getting something? So if you were to create data in a format that would then create a score that says, with these conditions, kind of what we already do ourselves when we look at a report. Okay, what is my ADR and what's my occupancy? What's my length of stay? What's my total transaction value? And am I converting enough of those to go to the pace that I'm looking for budget? We do this mentally every day when we look at a report. Well, abbreviate all that. Give it is it there? A mark. Are we doing what we said? Are we doing less than what we said? Are we doing more what we said? And by so, whatever number you assign to it, what value you want to identify as for that. Is it a percentage variation? Is it a scale variation? Is it a 3 out of 5 variation positive or a 3 out of 5 variation negative? Is it a 5.7% better, 4.7% less, whatever? Whatever makes sense to you, you create an indicator. Great. That abbreviates a lot of your stuff already because it gives you a good look at it, but not to make it prohibitive. When we were doing bots, still do bots, and ManyChat and so forth and so on. We do it for websites and so on. We have what I called, and you've heard me talk about bots many times over the course of 10 years of the show. We have the 3 rules. I'm a big iRobot fan, Isaac Asimov. 3 rules. 1, a bot should never act like it's a human. 2, a bot should never get in the way of talking to a human. 3, a bot should always allow a human's connection to be available at any time. Follow the 3 rules. Same too with data. Any data that's presented that is aggregated or created in indices for should always be connected to the source of what that report was generated from. It should never be a disconnect where I have to go play Where's Waldo, find the needle in the haystack. Why is this number showing up for me on my notification? But now I got to go to what page where, on what dashboard who, for what property X, to look at who. Now all of a sudden it's the needle in the haystack. It can't be that. It has to be, here's the notification. And if you want to look deeper, here's why the notification was created. Boom. And then it would show, again, not to be overly stars and stripes and, bars and graphs and so forth, is here is the summation that created the indices that we sent you. Here's your performance X, and this is why it's a variant Y. Okay, well, again, maybe I want to know more about it than just what that is saying, where even though I've broken down into some categories, it's still an overview of the program. Click deeper. And now I'm into, say, the campaign structure. Maybe I'm into the the group structure. Maybe I'm into individual ads and saying, why are we looking at ads that are pushing these filters? Because they're performing so negatively, it's having an overall effect on our budget spend for the whole cluster group, all aka campaign. Hallelujah. But you've now answered your question by actually being notified. So that's one first step. The next step, which is the really cool one, is wonder if you could begin to have an overall health evaluation. We've been doing this in beta. It's fun. So you have these indices, you have your performance indices that you've defined as to how you look at the data and how you want it to be notifying you as to what it's doing. But then you take and even add another layer on top of it that says, let's take these indices and create a score, a kind of a overall perspective. How are my paid campaigns doing? How are my organic things doing? Well, wait a minute, hold on. Now we're still segmented. Why don't we look at it from the way we look at everything? How are we getting engaged? Now we go back to that funnel perspective. And I'm not a fan of funnels because I think it's an overused extension of description, but it works. Let's break it down into, what if we created an indication as to all the stages we're looking at? How many people are engaging with us? How many people are clicking with us? How many people are going to the cart with us? And how many people are actually buying from that cart experience? And let's create some sort of health score. How well are we doing in this whole process? And where we see things, we now see trend. For instance, remember my earlier example that I was talking about where maybe we increased the volume of our engagements so that even though our conversion went down by sheer volume increase, the actual revenue went up. And in a normal reporting world, as I mentioned, that would not get seen very readily. They would see the green arrow up, the positive number in revenue, they'd be fine with it. Little did they know that there was a trend happening. Okay. And that was, we're beginning to see, if we were to create this health report, that although the channel contribution is there, okay, at the upper end of the funnel, that the traffic is positive and it's positively going to the clicks, and the lower aspect of the funnel, they would see a negative as a delta, okay, variation to what it was performing as before it, that we see a reduction down in the production conversion. Positive on the upper end, higher volume, showing a negative delta on the conversion factor. So now, and this is where the smart people come in, the people that are responsible, that have the titles to do this, is that an instance or an indices? Is that just an anomaly that happened that it was on a Monday post-event and we get the downturn? Or is it a perpetuation? We should monitor that because we got to see if it's a trend. Now, the amount of the delta, as we found in our beta testing, is an indicator of the quickness of it, the incident rate of it happening. If you have a high delta that one day you're at zero, which is meaning that you're doing as well as what you're getting, and now you're at a negative 5% the next day, something relatively strong happened. There was something between the day before and the day of that happened to create the conversion to dip strongly. If you see a 0.5, 0.6, 1.2, whatever it is like that one day, and then you see it perpetuating the next day at 0.5, 0.1, whatever, see the next day at 0.7, 0.8, you're seeing a gradual diminishment of trend. Now, what does this all mean? I'm ranting on these numbers that you don't even see in your head because you're now looking at the data to get the answer you want. Is what we're doing still as effective and still as productive as what we anticipated it to be doing what we needed to do by the time we said we had these goals? What are we doing with this? So in the world of the example I had where you have maybe a higher volume and lower conversion, or maybe you have lower volume and higher conversion, whatever the metric variations are, you now have an indices that say whether or not the health is matching. Am I optimizing the same amount of traffic up or down as the conversion value up or down for it? Are they measuring the similarities, what they're coming into versus what they're producing? If I see any variations of that, I can now monitor that to know whether or not the campaign's run its course, the group has run its course, its ads has run its course, whether the channel has run its course, or if there's an indicative problem that we have. Maybe there's an inventory issue, inventory availability, because you can use your denials reports. Maybe there's a rate issue that the packaging is creating counterproductive business. Whatever it is, it gives you an opportunity to understand, to look for what it is that would be a corrective measure and or an explanation that it's a temporary dip and or just a variance at that particular point. But the idea now, going back to why I brought up vendors to this, in the world of monthly summaries and monthly reviews and monthly affirmations for the next month, this doesn't work. Because now as the client, you can look at your numbers and see what your vendor's doing for you for whatever you hold them responsible for, paid campaigns being my example most used. And you see that, wow, we're beginning to diminish the effectiveness of our campaign. I wonder if that's an issue. And so you now communicate with the vendor, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Hopefully they are, if not them calling you first. And say, well, we're seeing the campaign dip, the production campaigns dip here in this location. We're seeing this campaign isn't working well, and it's targeted to this geo or these demos or whatever. We had an A/B variation to it. We're going to turn back online and see if we were just missing the mark or the mark changed where those people are no longer the focus and these people are. This is what we're doing to correct it, as an example of this. That ongoing dialogue, because of being able to watch the potential of trends or pace of change, okay, is what's going to make the difference on how you engage with your vendor. Now there's a perpetuity of engagement. And vendors are not built for this. Vendors are the least cost denominator. The A team comes in and pitches their product to you. You buy their product. The A team then is at best supervising what you're doing, but it's been assigned down to a lower cost person to do by line items what they sold you that was going to get done for you. And that person is not the most skilled at doing these types of intuitive and interactive ways of looking at data. They're there to create a function. Okay, I'm your account manager. We want to build ad campaigns for your drive market for your state. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Filter for drive market. This is the state. Here's the ads. Generate this. Boom, it's up and running. That's their role. They're not there to go look at things and saying, hey, I'm seeing something different here. Instead, they're the ones that sit at the end of your monthly report going, well, you gave us a budget of this. You told us you wanted to focus on that. We built those campaigns. They ran. This is the production. Maybe not as good as what we wanted, but we did what you asked. That's 1,000 conversations I've been a part to, that I've seen, that I've been on the receiving end of. I've never been on the sending end of it, but I'm on the receiving end of it, and also as a third party watching it when people ask me to come in and be the advocate of what should be done to fixing our relationship with our vendor, which I do quite a lot of. It's like making, and it's both sides. I help the vendor become a better vendor by communicating with the client in a way that the client understands what the vendor's trying to do. By the same token, I help the client get more out of their vendor. I love the role in lots of ways to fix it. I feel like fixing things. Anyways, so this ability now to change from reporting to action, this ability to better define what the data is telling us with having an answer that we want and a modality of asking to get that answer. These trending things is reducing the amount of static data. Here's all the data, charts, graphs, and bars. We're going up in this, and this is this. What does that mean? I don't know, but this arrow is going up, and that arrow is red. But revenue seems to be good. Good for me. Boom. How many times look at tab 4 on your star report kind of thing, right? You're looking for benchline-based metrics. I'm asking the same thing, but now with much more useful data, the accumulation of data in such a way that you can see things before they turn into a larger problem. This ability to look at the data in a useful way. It solves the biggest two issues that I have about reporting: the time spent creating them, because this is all capable of being built for it, and also the time spent understanding the data or looking at the data that is not as useful because it's just simply a report that used to be had there. So there you have it. I think I browbeated the idea down and collaborated as to why it's such a thing. The beta test, to be honest with you, to just add a topping to the topping that I've already mentioned, this idea of the testing we're doing for taking indices and putting them into a health forecast has proved very productive, very insightful. We had a circumstance where we were beta testing it for a client, and we just turned on Skynet to see if it would give us other insights that we couldn't see readily. And we immediately, kind of what I was talking about, where are we in variances to what we had, and saw where our breakage was in a faster way than had we done and poured over the reports and looked and asked for correlations of data and so forth. It gave us a very quick indicator as to, well, that's pacing down. Our organic social has really fallen off a cliff. We found out that we had a lot of active content that was of a past time event, but it was still actively being pushed in the ad campaigns where it shouldn't have been. It was left as a part of an ad campaign that should have been turned off, and we saw the bleed from that. That was one way of it being used. The top end of all of this, above all this, is to do into the predictive aspect of this. There's a whole new branch of Google's algorithm or AI that's out that does math. That's always been the bane of AI. It doesn't do math. It does comparative analysis, conditional analysis, but it doesn't do math. They actually have one of their earlier versions of a math AI that they've released for usage that we're playing with, to give the ability for us to potentially go and say, that the HAL 2000 tells you, hey, your paid performance campaigns are going down, like a notification would tell you, by X%. Oh, good. But this is what I think you can do to correct it. This channel is the detrimental channel of contribution. This is what's creating the negative impact on your ad campaigns. It's related to a program that, or a promotion that is at its final ends, and looking at your occupancy, you have no rooms to sell related to this promotion anyway. So you're spending money and you're irritating people that they can't convert. It's not worth it to spend this money. I suggest taking it and putting it into this program, which is on the uptick of growth and higher in productivity, and get better yield from it. Wouldn't you love something to tell you that, where you're literally saying, well, here's the problem, and here is what you need to do about it? That would be a much larger solution to it all. So With that, that's our the highest end for that. Um, Thank you for going through and listening to my process of changing reporting to action. And we're going to have some tools we're going to talk about on the podcast today that are related to creating these types of engagement reporting notifications, ways to take the data and accumulate it into more refined notification process. Welcome you to join us on our podcast. We do that every Friday after the show. We also recast this show 11:30 a.m. Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, 11:30 a.m. London time for our EU and Mideast friends. You can always reach out to me for further follow-up questions, suggestions, or feedback at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com, or you can go to hdm.show/talkback, and there's an audio way you can communicate with me and answer questions or give feedback in that sense. Thank you so much for watching us on our TV station, Hospitality Channel. Thank you for watching us on all the channels we distribute to. And again, my name is Lauren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I look forward to talking to you all next week.